The woman found something strange when cleaning the glass. There was something strange on the glass that she couldn't clean. Little did she know that the wall behind her was approaching quietly. The huge pressure made the woman unable to breathe. Just before it was about to burst, the wall instantly returned to its original state, as if nothing had happened. At first, the woman thought it was just an illusion caused by not sleeping well, but when she continued to clean the glass, she found that there were still traces of being squeezed on it. What happened next was even more bizarre. She picked up an egg and found that the weight was wrong. It was empty inside, and she kept knocking 12 eggs. The woman's name is Alice. She lives with her husband in an isolated desert town. The residents here live a refined petty bourgeoisie life. Daily necessities are provided free of charge by the community and are inexhaustible. At 10 o'clock every morning, the elite men in suits and leather shoes set off on time and drove to work at Shingley Company in the center of the desert. The beautiful full-time wife only needs to see her husband off, do the fixed housework, and then go to the dance class to exercise her body to ensure that she appears in front of her husband in the best posture. In her spare time, she wanted to gossip in the sun. Besides being forbidden to discuss her husband's work and leave the community to walk into the desert, Alice's life was impeccable. However, the moving walls and empty eggs always made her feel uneasy, especially when she saw that the black girl next door seemed to be mentally abnormal. The way she closed her eyes and prayed with a toy airplane in her hand always made her feel dazed. On this day, a new couple moved into the town. When the residents welcomed them to become a part of this place, the black girl suddenly questioned it. The black girl's husband forcibly took his wife away. Everyone went to meet him. A man named Frank stood up. He was the boss of Victory Company and the person in charge of building this community. He first explained to everyone that the black girl's marriage had problems, so her mental state was abnormal, but the reason why everyone would have the right to be the master of the house. Frank's speech was inspiring, and it really made everyone forget the episode just now. But Alice turned around and found that her husband disappeared. She looked everywhere, but accidentally broke into the backyard and met May's dull eyes. May's husband couldn't bear it anymore and pulled the curtains. Alice saw a flash of stretched eyes on the curtains. When they gathered again, the housewives said that May had mental problems. She violated the rules and took her son to the desert to play, causing her son to disappear in the desert. She was also mentally confused and talked nonsense at the party, affecting her husband's image in front of her boss. Now she is receiving treatment from a doctor. Everyone took May as a lesson, but they couldn't help but talk about their husband's work in secret. Suddenly, a small earthquake occurred in the community. All the housewives hurriedly shut up, but Alice's brain was in a trance. She suspected that she was tired, so after seeing her husband off the next day, she took a sightseeing bus alone to relax. The sightseeing bus has a fixed route. Before reaching the end, a smoking plane fell straight to the top of the mountain. Alice screamed loudly and hurriedly asked the driver to stop the car, wanting her to drive to the top of the mountain to help with the rescue. The driver, who was full of enthusiasm just now, refused seriously, saying that the company would not let her go that way, and it would be safer to stay here. Alice had no choice but to get off the car and walk alone to the unknown mountain road. She did not see the fear in the driver's eyes, and ignored the warning signs on the roadside. However, in this vast desert, death was everywhere. Suddenly, a familiar song sounded in her ears, which sounded like her husband's humming. After walking for an unknown period of time, she still couldn't find the crash site. However, she saw a strange building on the top of the mountain, which was inlaid with mirrors and shaped like a flying saucer. Alice clearly remembered that from the community map. This was the Victory Company where the men went to work every day. Unexpectedly, it was so simple that it could not accommodate 20 people, and it didn't look like they were researching Alice sleeping after get-off work, and if there was a plane crash, the residents of the town would definitely hear the loud noise. Her husband's explanation made Alice suspect that she had had a weird dream. However, the next day, Blackie called for the first time and said that she knew Alice had walked into the desert secretly and saw the strange building. She knew that all of them had been deceived. She wanted Alice to join her to leave here. Although Alice also realized that something was wrong, she still chose to believe her husband. She decisively hung up the phone and ignored it, but when she went to the dance class, Alice saw May's figure in the mirror. She raised her hand. Then, she banged her head against the mirror, as if she was trapped in a certain space and struggling desperately. Her terrified screams interrupted the class training. Alice looked around, but found that everyone was looking at her with the same eyes, just like they looked at May at the beginning. Looking back at the mirror, everything returned to its original state. In shock, Alice ran home desperately. Before entering the house, she saw May standing on the roof, looking into the distance steadily. She borrowed Alice's hand, raised a fruit knife, and cut her throat in front of her, and fell to the ground like a kite with a broken string. That night, Alice told her husband about May, but her husband insisted that May accidentally fell while cleaning the window at POA. He first impatiently accused Alice of always imagining bad scenes, forcing Alice to prove herself hysterically, and then asked her to be quiet and not to shout. Alice firmly believed in everything she saw. May used death to plant the seeds of doubt in her heart, making her suddenly realize that there seemed to be a shocking secret hidden under the surface of her ideal life. This feeling made her breathless. Sometimes she dreamed of falling into the bottom of a cold lake. The endless fear and despair always woke her up in her dreams. Sometimes she was in a daze while wrapping cabbage, and unconsciously wrapped her head tightly in it, circle after circle, and even had to smooth it to ensure that no air could get in. The husband realized that Alice was seriously ill, and quickly asked a doctor to check. However, Alice's various indicators were extremely normal. In the end, the doctor concluded that after she saw May fall, coupled with excessive fatigue, she developed post-traumatic stress disorder. This stress often leads to distorted memory. It can also trigger nightmares. Alice was speechless, but when the doctor opened the medical record box to prescribe medicine, she saw May's name at a glance, and it was marked as a dangerous element. Alice's hair stood on end, and she listened to the doctor chattering about the efficacy of the medicine. Her brain was spinning rapidly. Seeing that the doctor was about to leave, she hurriedly asked about the details of May's treatment. Her curious look really made the doctor put down the medical record box and explained that May suffered from severe paranoia, so she needed to be cared for at all times. May's husband was unable to complete his work and was eventually fired by the company. This explanation seemed gentle, but was actually full of danger, but Alice didn't care at all, because her goal was achieved. While her husband was seeing off the guests, and no one was paying attention to her, she quickly opened the abandoned file box. After confirming that her husband and the doctor had driven away, Alice took out May's medical record. She wanted to take a closer look, but found that the key places were all blacked out. Obviously, this was a deliberate trap. Alice collapsed and stared at the burning medical record in a daze. But she could not think of where the breakthrough was. Little did she know that the doctor and Frank wanted to send her to hell completely. At the party that night, the two looked at Alice as if they were looking at prey. Then, at the most exciting moment, Frank pulled her husband onto the stage and loudly declared that he would promote her to manager. Listening to Frank's excited description of his grand plan, the residents in the audience cheered like believers, and her husband danced wildly as if he was controlled. Alice became more and more uneasy, feeling that she was being brainwashed and had to escape immediately. She hid in the dressing room in horror. Her good sisters caught up with her, and asked what was going on. Alice finally couldn't help but confide in the scene of the black girl's suicide, and what she saw after touching the building on the top of the mountain. Unexpectedly, after hearing this, the sisters slowly retreated, and their expressions changed, and listening to her husband cheering in the center of the stage, Alice suddenly doubted whether she was really making a fuss. Why did she want to disrupt such a beautiful life? Life seemed to be back on track. Alice became a virtuous housewife again, no longer suspicious. As a dink, she even agreed to have a baby for her husband. However, her giving up the struggle made Frank feel boring. At another party, when Alice was preparing food for everyone in the kitchen, she sighed with regret on her face. "Your good sisters don't believe what you say. Why should everyone believe you?" Alice knew what she was talking about and stopped in shock, while Frank provoked more arrogantly, saying that he had been waiting for someone to challenge her. After all, great men are pushed to the limit to change the course of history. I thought Alice could force me to explode my potential, but I didn't expect that the two hadn't met head-on yet. Let her hide in the kitchen to prepare dinner. Frank left triumphantly, leaving Alice dumbfounded for a long time. It turned out that what the black girl said was true. Everyone was just Frank's plaything. Alice was not a coward. After locking the enemy, she was ready to launch a counterattack. She first took away her husband's main seat. The extraordinary behavior made the lively party quiet instantly. Then she asked one of the short-haired wives, "Where are you from?" Although the short-haired wife felt puzzled, she still answered that she was from the abandoned city. For a while, the wives at the table found that they were from the abandoned city. When Alice asked everyone where they went to the beach last, everyone's answer was surprisingly consistent. Frank couldn't laugh anymore. Alice continued to narrate. Everyone fell in love at first sight on the train, and spent their honeymoon on the island. Everything was set by Frank. However, her resistance came at a painful price. Frank gave Alice a paranoid disease, like he did to the black girl. The men in the community, seeing her was like seeing a madman talking nonsense. Her housewife friends didn't believe her either, especially Frank's wife, who angrily accused her of belittling and insulting her husband. Everyone left the place as if avoiding the plague, while Frank smiled smugly and asked Alice to continue the chant had not been repaired. When her husband came to her, she really didn't have the energy to deal with him. She just said that she would go to the hospital for duty in a while, and was too tired to go to bed. Then she closed the bedroom door with a bang. This simple behavior instantly hurt her husband's fragile self-esteem. Fearing that Alice would abandon him, the husband decided to join the Victory community. This so-called community is actually from workaholics to dependent wives. In order to keep his wife trapped in the virtual world forever, the husband knocked his wife unconscious from behind, dragged her into the bedroom, chained her limbs, and then installed special instruments to log into the system. Every day, the men in the community go out to work, which is actually to drive to the top of the mountain to exit the system, earning service fees for running the community in the real world, and treat them like vegetative people. To maintain the wife's basic vital signs, the community forbids the wife to ask about her husband's work and forbids them to leave the community and walk into the desert. Alice woke up too late, and the fierce housewife with a smile in her eyes. She tried her best to take care of her husband. Whether it was getting up on time to make breakfast, or doing housework and exercising, her husband was the most important thing in her life. The good sister kept talking about the latest gossip, but Alice couldn't understand what she was saying. Since receiving treatment, Alice hugged him in her arms, but the good sister lit a cigarette, and there seemed to be an inextricable sadness in her eyes. On this day, the husband came home from get off work and suddenly hummed a song. The extremely familiar melody instantly brought back Alice's memories. She heard it when she was looking for the crashed plane. I have also heard it in the real world when her husband gave her water. Alice fell to the ground in pain. Her husband, who didn't understand, just wanted to help scrutiny and hatred. Her husband stood there, not knowing how to explain. Then he immediately reacted, cried, and told Alice that he was saving her. Alice didn't know whether she was crazy or her husband was crazy. Her husband deprived her of her rights in the name of true love and made her a numb housewife.